Today I received a Neville Goddard testimonial from a kid who wants to be known as a 19-year-old kid. This testimonial seemed out of this world, so I decided to share it with you as this 19-year-old kid's wish, that I might inspire you to go all out for whatever it is you wish to fulfill. It's one thing to read Neville Goddard and other teachings by similar mystics, and it's another thing to be able to consistently put it into practice until success despite any adversities. And now, without further ado, the testimonial of a 19-year-old kid. And now, if I dare to assume that I am now the man that I want to be, and I persist in that assumption, watching my mind morning, noon, and night, so that anything I find myself dwelling upon that is in conflict with my assumption, I put it aside. I will be faithful to this divine vision, the vision of myself, and any time I catch myself daring to feel less than the thing I'm trying to feel and externalize in my world, I simply stop it and go back to that assumption, that I am the man that I want to be. If I persist in it and it becomes a fact, then I have found him. If this law proves itself in performance, then I have found him. Well, I have found him, the true Christ that Neville talks about, the Jesus Christ in Scripture, the real God. I have found him. I never thought this whole thing would actually work, but it did. It took me 4 weeks of persisting to start seeing the harvest of my dream, and another 6 weeks of even more persisting for it to actually externalize in my world. That makes it a total of 10 weeks to realize my goal in the flesh. At times, I felt like I was running into a blind alley, but I said screw it, I lose nothing, and did it anyways. I was desperate. It was the only thing I could do. I reasoned that I wouldn't want to look back and regret that I hadn't just tried to apply this law and set myself free. If I assume now that I am the man that I want to be, who's doing it? It's God. It's God that's doing it because I am God. If I and my Father are one, then my Father has heard my assumption. And if he's heard it, and I am confident that he heard it, then can I not say to my inner being, "Thank you, Father." I know he's heard it because he and I are one. So I then begin to say, "Thank you, Father, you heard me. I know you always hear me." I will give a short backstory. I'm 19 years old and I graduated from high school in a country I shall not name, in the continent of Africa, in November 2019. In April of 2020, I received a full scholarship to study at a university in Canada, beginning my studies in September of 2020. I was supposed to travel to Canada in late August of 2020, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Canada closed its borders, and so did my country, meaning I was stuck home until further notice. I then began having online classes at home. This was very difficult, as the difference in time between Canada and my country is 7 hours. There were times I would be having quizzes and important tests at 3 a.m. in the morning because it was 8 p.m. in Canada. I struggled a lot with my sleep schedule, and I hated studying from home, roughly 8,000 miles away from where I was supposed to be. On the 4th of September 2020, I decided I had had enough of home. I wanted out. I felt imprisoned, as it were. I just wanted out. I simply wanted out. So that day in the afternoon, I went to my room and I came up with a strategy to pursue a manifestation project where 3 times a day, I would constructively imagine my wish fulfilled, and in between, force myself to carry on mental conversations from the premise that I'm already in Canada. I wanted to be out by November, early November. Upon making this decision to be out by November, I decided to embark on a journey in my imagination. Well, all right, that night on the 4th of September, on retiring, I closed my eyes and imagined myself flying to Canada. I tried to the best of my ability to actually feel it, and all right, I did it. I fell asleep in the state of I'm finally going away. The next morning, when I woke up, I assumed I had arrived safely at the airport, did screening tests, and was now being transported to campus. Later that night, about an hour before bed, I assumed I was unpacking my suitcase in my room and spreading my bed. And finally, at bedtime, I slept here as if I was asleep in my room in Canada. The next day in the afternoon, I imagined myself opening up a Canadian bank account and getting the card. Throughout the day back home, where I was physically, whenever I saw my family, I heard them in my imagination tell each other that I had arrived safely in Canada. As this project of mine went on, I would assume I was sitting on a bench outside on campus. I would see the trees, the deer, and I could smell the cool, windy air of Toronto, and I could feel it hitting my face. I could actually feel myself there. In fact, one night, I actually woke up in the 4D world, arranging my desk in my dorm room. I began to contemplate home from Canada, and I would wonder how everyone back home is doing. I began holding and feeling my UPass card, confirming to myself that I am there now. Throughout the day, as I would be doing dishes at home, I would be thinking to myself, man, I remember when I was doing dishes back home. I wonder how my family is getting on at home now knowing I'm not there to do the dishes anymore. There were times when I would feel so much satisfaction from my imaginal activity that outwardly I would start smiling like an idiot and I could not control it. Sometimes my family would see it and ask me, what's going on? Well, what was going on was during the times I had dinner with my family. I wouldn't really be paying attention to dinner itself or my family. Rather, I would be having the most fantastic inner dialogue with myself saying, man, I miss my family. I remember when I was still back home. And I'd start smiling like a little child. The truth is, it was hard. 24/7, I tamed my mind and forced it to think from the premise that I was already in Canada. Imagine trying to train your mind that way. But I preserved and trained my mind like beating a horse. I woke up in the assumption that I was in Canada, went throughout the day with it, and slept in it. I went so deep in the project that I even physically changed the time on my phone to match EST time. That's why sometimes when someone would ask me the time, I'd check my phone and then in my head begin adding 7 hours to it to figure out Central African time. In my head, I was in Canada. My body became so conditioned to this that there were times I genuinely thought it was, let's say, only 3 p.m., only to get shocked to realize it's 10 p.m. at night, because to me, it was 3 p.m. in Canada, and heck, I'm in Canada. I would sit on my chair and begin contemplating how home was 8,000 miles away from me to my southeast, 7 hours ahead of me, and I would say to myself, my family is probably getting ready to sleep now because it's already 10 p.m. there. I persisted in all of this. I persevered, and when I felt hopeless, I would affirm within myself the phrase, I did it, I'm doing it, and I will continue to do it until that which I've done is perfectly externalized within my world. Whenever I felt like nothing was working, I imagined Neville actually there with me, giving me the harsh Abdullah treatment, slamming a door in front of me and saying, who is talking of you going to Canada? You went to Canada. You are in Canada. I've said all that I have to say. And I would respond, okay, Neville. Well, things got even worse. Here I am doing assignments, and I get an email from the residence department and the scholarship committee explaining that if I do not defer my residence to January, they will hold my family financially responsible for the cost of an empty residence. So I have a choice: defer my residence now to January, meaning I can only come to Canada in January, or be naive with this experiment of mine, ignore the email, and continue in my assumption. I chose the latter and told no one. For 2 weeks, I kept ignoring the series of warning emails that came until I passed the deadline. In this case, I panicked now because how will I explain to my family that they were to pay for the cost of residence simply because I was naive and stupid to just defer my residence when I was told, and rather be stubborn and continue this little imagination experiment of mine. So I had to write an official 2-page appeal to residents asking them to remove the financial penalty. My appeal was granted and my residence was deferred by the university itself until January, meaning I could only move in January, but luckily enough, I wouldn't get in trouble with my family because the penalty fees were waived. So here I am now faced fully with the sentence that I can only move in January. What do I do? I re-listened to Rearrange the Mind by Neville Goddard, where he vividly narrates his experience in leaving the army. So I persevered in my assumption and ignored the facts of life and didn't let reason dictate my feelings. I heard vividly Neville asking me the question, must your premises always be based upon the evidence of your senses? So what is reason? Reason to me doesn't mean to me what it means to everyone else. If I really believe that I am out of prison, then I will close my eyes and not see the prison, even though the bars are there. So I applied this to myself and I said to myself, if I really believe that I am out of here, then surely this residence episode means nothing. I will now close my eyes to everything. So I persisted in my assumption even more. It felt like the walls were closing in on me even more, but I had no choice but to persist. The moment I felt down, the more I listened to that lecture, Rearrange the Mind, on repeat, and I would let Neville's voice just seep through my veins and motivate me. There was one night in particular that stood out to me. It was Thursday, the 24th of October. I was doing my regular routine of imagining my wish fulfilled. This time, I decided to enact a scene where I was in my dorm room standing next to the window and looking out at the trees on campus. In this act, I began to contemplate home as being 8,000 miles away from me, and I began to feel homesick and nostalgic. I caught the feeling of nostalgia so vividly that for about 10 seconds, I genuinely felt nostalgia and felt sad. But it was a peculiar type of sadness, a sweet sadness. I was happy that I was free, but I was sad that I missed my family. The feeling of sadness and happiness mixed together to form this great, great emotion. I felt it so real that in those 10 seconds, I was in a trance. I actually felt this emotion to be present, and then I snapped out of it. Upon snapping out of it, my chest hardened, and I felt this concrete, cement-like feeling that the whole thing was done. This feeling lasted for, I would say, about 5 seconds. But in those 5 seconds, I knew. I just knew it was done. Obviously, the feeling wore off and my reasoning mind went back to being rational. Anyways, 4 weeks later, from the day I started all of this, the 4th of September. On the 4th of October, I get a message from a friend, and in that message is a link to the www.canada.ca website, where in it they explained that they have decided to open up borders to the international students on the 21st of October, provided that the university has a COVID-19 readiness program. I screamed. I couldn't believe it at all. I remember this day so vividly because this message came in while I was doing the dishes and doing my I remember when I used to do dishes back home routine. I literally went into tears from the excitement and I said, "Father, really?" But there were problems because remember, I still had to submit my biometrics for the latter stages of my study permit application. And in order to do that, I had to travel to my neighboring country to submit my fingerprints there. Now, because of the pandemic, all borders were closed, so I could not even travel to submit my biometrics, so still there was a dead end. Fast forward to exactly 3 days later. I see an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years post a status on Instagram of him flying abroad, and I asked him how he managed to travel when borders were closed. He then explains to me that if I could write to the Ministry of Health, they can allow me to leave the country to go give my biometrics. Well, all right. I immediately write a letter to the Ministry of Health, and the letter got there on Tuesday. The letter telling the health director that, hey, I need to travel in 3 days, so please give me a travel permit under short notice. Exaggeration for effect, of course. When the policy stated that you needed to submit this letter a week before your intended travel date. Well, it worked out, and when I got to the Ministry of Health, my permit was the one approved first, before even the others who had submitted their letters a week before mine. I was at the back of the line, but my name was called first, and the other people complained. I left the Ministry of Health building like a little child screaming from excitement. Now fast forward to when I'm back home and I've just successfully traveled back from submitting my biometrics. My biometrics got approved the very same day. And then the same day I got an email from the Canada High Commission requesting my passport. My passport gets collected by DHL on Friday at 11 a.m. And the same Friday, by coincidence, there was a DHL flight leaving, and my passport left on that flight. To give more context, when I called DHL, they said due to COVID restrictions, their flights leave on Mondays or Wednesdays, but no flight had left earlier that week, so that's why this flight left on Friday, the very day I gave my passport. My passport arrived that day, and on Tuesday, it had been received by the High Commission. Well, I got it back the following week. Now remember, I had said that residents had deferred my residence spot to January and I could no longer come. Well, I received an email the exact same day I got my passport back, and in the email it read, "Good news. We have decided that should you be able to travel to Canada earlier than January, you can still move in earlier and the scholarship will cover any prorated charges. You could ignore the fact that you have deferred your residence." An amazing piece of synchronicity, isn't it? Now on to flights. No flights were leaving my country, and my only hope was a repatriation flight leaving towards the end of November, and even that was not confirmed. But despite this, I still persisted in my assumption that I left and I arrived in Canada long before December and long before January. I'm being told that the earliest I can leave is towards December, and yet here I am saying, no, I arrived in Canada long before that. Well, that morning I'm scrolling through Instagram and another old friend I haven't spoken to in years posts a story. And in that story is a statement from the president saying that airports will open on Monday, and I'm seeing this on Friday. Well, here's yet another synchronicity that occurred. Another old friend of mine traveled abroad 3 weeks before on a repatriation flight. I was talking to him casually about it, and we got to COVID testing, and he goes on to tell me about testing at a private lab. To give context, normal COVID tests would take roughly 3 days to produce results. Yet with this private lab, you could get your results within a few hours. I didn't think of this conversation significant at the time, but later on I realized why it was significant. Because when I later bought my plane ticket, according to the airline, I had to have a test done 1 day before my travel date, and that lab was the only option. So because of this old friend of mine, that's how I knew of this option. Here I am then on Thursday, the 12th of November, and I'm hearing my family talking of the possibility of me leaving on the 24th instead of the 17th, the following Tuesday, as it felt too rushed, and I'm denying it. I'm denying it because to me, the condition I attached to my inner being was that I left and arrived in Canada long before December. So I sat on a chair that day in a room and said, "Dear inner man, Neville wanted to leave Barbados early so he could get to his early appointment on the 1st of May in America. Well, me too. I want to leave early. I've waited long enough and I want out. I have been faithful for too long for you to disappoint me. If I leave on the 24th, then I would be very disappointed. I want to leave now because the earlier I leave, the earlier I can finish quarantining and the earlier I can go to campus. If I leave later, there's a possibility I'll even start my exams without having yet settled on campus. Those start early in December. Well, Father, you give me all that I ask for if I am faithful to this principle Neville teaches. So I am in Canada, and I left as early as I wanted. And upon consulting my higher self, I then began to imagine hearing the Ethiopian Airlines lady calling me and saying, "Sir, we have good news. Your flight for next week, the 17th of November, has been confirmed." Well, the next day, I was holding my final ticket, and it was confirmed that I would be leaving on the 17th of November, exactly when I wanted to leave. On Tuesday, the 17th of November, I was at the airport bidding my family farewell, and I arrived in Canada exactly 48 hours later. When you realize your first ever big desire using this law and it works, I cannot describe the feeling to you. You feel like you've genuinely found him, the real Jesus Christ. I found him. The real Jesus is in you. For a while, I felt scared and went into deep contemplative thought. I'm God? Throughout the plane ride, I was constantly saying to myself, "You mean to tell me I myself am God?" So there's really no one out there thousands of miles away up there in the sky. I am he. I am he? I have been he all along? Really? Father, I am you and you are me? Me? Imagine being 40,000 feet in the air, trying to make it make sense to you, that you are God himself. In all your life, you've taken that right away from yourself. As I write this, I'm still puzzled. Now I truly understand what Neville says when he explains that when in your imagination, you assume a feeling of the wish fulfilled, it's really God that is doing it, because you are God. And if God is assuming it, then surely it must come to pass. And if you hear a friend in your imagination, it's not you hearing that friend, it's really God. And if God has heard it, then can you not say, "Thank you, Father"? We are promised in Scripture that if we know that he hears us, then we know we have already obtained the request made of him. That's why I like this technique of having a dialogue with my higher self after imagining, because I know that he hears me. He is the one that heard the Ethiopian Airlines lady telling me, "Your flight for next week has been confirmed." And if he heard it, then surely I have obtained my request. For if I'm now worried that because this God is thousands of miles in the sky, and there are billions of people all coming to him with requests, so he may not have heard mine, then I'm not really sure that prayer works, am I? But if I am now convinced that he is the very depth of my essential being, then I know he hears me and I'm settled. So feel after him and you will find him. The most holy place you can ever enter is the center of contemplative thought, for the Father is within you. Go out there and conquer the world. This stuff really works. Neville was right. What would that feeling be like if it were true? Well, then feel it. Wear that mood like a suit of clothes. Feast on the sensation, morning, noon, and night. Order your inner conversations aright, and begin to contemplate the time when your goal had not yet been realized. Persist, and I know not of any greater power that can stop you from realizing your goal. Best, a 19-year-old kid.
And yet another interesting website, jonathanfields.com. Can your brain make you buff? Imaginary workouts can build strength and fuel weight loss. Webpage excerpts. Breakthrough research in the fields of exercise physiology has yielded stunning revolutions about the way we get fit. The big surprise, though, is not what we have to do, but what we might not have to do. For decades, exercise scientists have worked to discover how we get fit. Getting stronger, we were told, was about creating enough resistance in a muscle to create millions of micro tears that would, over days, weeks, and months, rebuild themselves bigger, leaner, and stronger. So when we lift weights, sprint, or engage in pretty much any kind of exercise, we set this whole process in motion. The entire cycle is known as hypertrophy, and it's always been considered a pretty mechanical experience. Weight loss has been tossed off with similar assumptions. Regardless of the methods used for short-term weight loss, sustained loss always comes back to calories in and calories out. It seems there may be a giant kink in this system, and it has to do with the brain's role in the whole process. Building muscle, it turns out, is not nearly as mechanical as we thought, and in fact, a recent study by Aaron M. Shackle and Lionel J. Standing at Bishop's University reveals you may be able to make a nearly identical gain in strength and fitness without lifting a finger. The study measured the strength gains in 3 different groups of people. The first group did nothing outside their usual routine. The second group was put through 2 weeks of highly focused strength training for one specific muscle 3 times a week. The third group listened to audio CDs that guided them to imagine themselves going through the same workout as the exercising group 3 times a week. And the results blew everyone away. The control group, who didn't do anything, saw no gains in strength. The exercise group, who trained 3 times a week, saw a 28% gain in strength. No big surprises there. But the group who did not exercise, but rather imagined exercising, experienced nearly the same gains in strength as the exercise group, 24%. The group that imagined exercising got nearly the same benefit in terms of strength gains as the group that actually worked out. And on another note, a Harvard study reported in February 2007 further bolstered the impact of your thoughts on calories burned. In that study, the housekeeping staff in a major hotel were told that what they did on a daily basis qualified as the amount of exercise needed to be fit and healthy. They made no changes in behavior, just kept on doing their job, same as always. 4 weeks later, those housekeepers had lost weight, lowered blood pressure, body fat percentage, weight-hip ratio, and BMI. A similar group of housekeepers who had not been led to believe their job qualified as exercise saw none of these changes. Simply believing their jobs were exercise caused their bodies to change. But there's something beyond the link between thoughts and chemistry when it comes to the specific quest to gain strength. Chemistry may help accelerate the growth of muscle, but it turns out strength may not be nearly as much about the size or hypertrophy as we thought. Applications include everything from accelerating rehab to slowing disease-related muscle degeneration, and yes, even delivering the ultimate sweat-free, lazy man-woman's workout. And from what Neville Goddard says of his imaginary techniques, anything is possible. Complete healing and reversal of diseases and so many other wonderful things. An interesting webpage, Successful People Who Use the Power of Visualization, by Anna Williams on mindbodygreen.com, webpage excerpts. Like most of America, we were thrilled by the U.S. women's soccer team's stunning performance on Sunday, but we were also inspired by more than just the team's win over Japan. In fact, we were just as excited to learn that star player Carly Lloyd credits visualization, the meditative practice of positive thinking, with helping her kill it on the soccer field. While training just before Sunday's game, Lloyd said she mentally visualized herself scoring 4 goals. She later went on to nail 3 into the net, the first woman in World Cup history to do so. When you're feeling good mentally and physically, those plays are just instincts. Lloyd, who is named the World Cup's most outstanding player, told the New York Times, "It just happens." Jim Carrey. In the early 1990s, Jim Carrey was an unknown actor struggling to get by. To stay motivated, he decided to write himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, dated it for 1994, and carried it in his wallet for daily inspiration. In 1994, Carrey learned he would reap exactly $10 million for his role in Dumb and Dumber. Today, Carrey is one of America's top movie stars, and he credits his constant visualization with helping him get there. Arnold Schwarzenegger. As a young athlete, Schwarzenegger swore by the power of visualization to reach his bodybuilding goals. "I had this fixed idea of growing a body like Reg Parks. The model was there in my mind. I only had to grow enough to fill it," he explained. "The more I focused it on this image and worked and grew, the more I saw it was real and possible for me to be like him." Later, when he transitioned to careers in acting and politics, Schwarzenegger said he employed similar mental tricks. "It's the same process I used in bodybuilding. What you do is create a vision of who you want to be, and then live that picture as if it were already true." Lindsey Vonn. One of the most successful female skiers in history, the gold medalist says her mental practice gives her a competitive edge on the course. "I always visualize the run before I do it," Vonn told Mind Body Green. "By the time I get to the start gate, I've run that race 100 times already in my head, picturing how I'll take the turns." But she doesn't just keep the images in her head. She's also known to physically simulate the path by literally shifting her weight back and forth as if she were on skis, as well as practice the specific breathing patterns she'll use during the race. "I love that exercise," Vonn has said. "Once I visualize a course, I never forget it, so I get on those lines and go through exactly the run that I want to have." And finally, Will Smith. A big advocate of the law of attraction, the award-winning actor says his positive thinking has helped him achieve happiness. "In my mind, I've always been an A-list Hollywood superstar. You all just didn't know yet." Smith has said of the visualizing technique that helped him along the way. He's also fond of quoting Confucius's motivating motto, a way of explaining his blockbuster success. He who says he can and he who says he can't are both usually right. In studying Neville's lectures, as well as reading his books, we come across so many examples of Neville's success, as well as those he taught their successes with using his imaginary techniques. But even today, as we go around the internet, we can see modern-day people who also have success with Neville's techniques. And we know from one study where one author interviewed major lottery jackpot winners that many of them just knew they were going to win. And we continue to see examples, even with celebrities, from athletes to entertainers, who are able to use their imagination, their beliefs, to get what they want, to succeed, to be at the top. I came across another interesting website, actually a discussion on one of the web pages of inwardquest.com. Someone wrote that they had heard a law of attraction teacher saying that being truly detached means you don't have a care whether you get the desired thing or not. And naturally their question was, well, how can they fool themselves to believe that when they truly need something? In fact, it's kind of dire, like a part-time job, or their life would be really tough without it. Jog Jr. responded, "Your inner being, or soul, or subconscious mind knows everything about you, your world, and the universe. Your conscious mind doesn't. Detachment has to do with your inclination to decide all the details about when, who, and how your stated desire should manifest. It's about not telling God how to do the job. This is why we always ask for exactly what we desire and add, or better, at the end. Soul energy has resources we never dreamed of. Detachment is about getting out of the way so all that is can deliver what it knows best is for you. Many people confuse detachment with allowing, entirely different. In short, allowing has to do with knowing it is done and getting on with your life as if it is done without any resistance. Everything you have now actively desired already is. It is our resistance that keeps it from manifesting immediately. Resistance represents the old programs, memes, and our subconscious that no longer serve our purposes. Thankfully, resistance is much easier to release than most may imagine. We have a built-in meter that is constantly monitoring our resistances. It's been with us from our first birth. Sadly, we begin to ignore it early in life, often because conscious mind or body wants something not so good for us. It may look good or taste good or smell good or whatever, but we all know now that that may be totally bad for us, but we go for it anyways. In this way, we grow to habitually ignore the meter. You'll be happy to know that your inner guidance meter still works perfectly, I promise. And get this, it only takes about 17 seconds to activate it at any time. Hear, see, feel this. The meter is the pain you experience in your life. It could be physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual. When you feel pain, you are somehow in resistance to your own deepest and innermost desires. You are out of tune with your inner being and source energy, resistant to the natural flow of well-being that flows through all of us. The antidote? Choose to feel good now. That's it. Don't let the simplicity fool you. Follow along here. Find a place in your heart, in your experiences that make you feel wonderful. Take your time, remember it vividly. Do it now. Close your eyes, feel it completely. After you get that feeling set in your mind, body, and heart, tell yourself that this is your new emotional anchor, like home base for a while. Now, next time you catch yourself feeling bad in any area of your being, here's what you do. Close your eyes and say, I choose to feel good now. Touch your thumb to your forefinger, always the same hand, and go to that beautiful feeling place and hold the feeling and image in your mind for 17 seconds. That will switch your energy over to no resistance. Hold it for another 68 seconds, and your energy will stay shifted into your beautiful new feeling. You don't have to stop. You can stay there as long as you like, use as needed, minute to minute, hour to hour, or day to day. Eventually, you will begin to feel good most of the time. And from now on, every time you touch your thumb to your forefinger, this will signal your inner being that you choose to feel good now. And that will make it easier and easier to go to this better feeling place whenever you want. I've witnessed miraculous healing take place just from practicing this simple exercise. I want you to know how powerful you really are. I share this info with you to help you experience the power you have over your own well-being. Detachment, yes. Allowing, yes. Resistance, I choose to feel good now. Yes. And by the way, many desires can now manifest almost instantaneously because there is no resistance. I know that we read and or listen to Neville's teachings as well as try to apply what he's taught in our life. Even Neville has said time to time in his teachings, he knows this isn't always easy, and that this is for the brave of heart. I think it would be a good supplement, what we've learned and what we apply from Neville's teachings. Even if we studied Neville for a year or even years, sometimes we do fall back and feel our emotions hijacked. And I think people sometimes come up with interesting tools to make it a little bit easier to be able to focus that imagination. So give it a try, whatever works for you, and if it doesn't, then let it go. And closing from another comment on that thread from Aphrodite, God works in mysterious ways. It is like a thief in the night. More often than not, goals come when you are busy looking at something else. Detachment from goals truly results to rapid manifestation. Gian is a member of the Abe Forum. He goes by the name Winner in Every Sense. He won a $2 million US lottery jackpot using the law of attraction, particularly the teachings of Abraham, which echo the teachings of Neville Goddard. My name is Gian, and I live in Sarasota, Florida, and this is my story on how I came to know, learn, and understand, still learning though, the Abraham teachings. It all started when I had a desire to win the lottery. I won the lottery when I was 19 years old, living in New Jersey. I'm now 22 years old and living in Sarasota, Florida. I first learned of the law of attraction when I was 18 and a half years old through The Secret. I saw it on the news, and I immediately went online and ordered the book and DVD. I got familiarized with it and started to apply it in my own life. It definitely changed my perspective on life. When I was 19 years old, things in my home life were going extremely bad. I come from a very critical and judgmental family. I remember one day saying to myself, I'm going to find a way to leave and never look back. I came across the Abraham teachings and I was astonished at how Abraham taught the law of attraction in detail. I came to have a broader understanding of the law of attraction through the Abraham teachings. The things I thought were left out, Abraham explained in detail. That's when my life started to really change. I still was yearning to leave my home, but didn't have the financial means to do it. I bought Mega Millions tickets for about 5 months and tried to align myself with it, but nothing happened. I remembered thinking to myself that it would be easier if I played the New Jersey Pick 6 Lotto, since not so many people were gunning for the same jackpot, since it's only a 1-state lottery, not a 12-state lottery like Mega Millions. So I started buying Pick 6 tickets every week, but to no avail. When I started buying Pick 6 Lotto tickets, I had a dream where I was handed a ticket that had the word winner printed on it. I woke up and had this indescribable determination to win. I said to myself, I'm going to win the jackpot. I then started to get serious about winning and about learning all I can of the law of attraction through the Abraham teachings. I started to come to a much bigger understanding of the law of attraction, about energy and about vibrations because of Abe. I made a list of everything I thought of myself, of money, and of the lottery. I came to realize that I didn't have much self-worth and self-love. My first priority was to love and accept myself and to feel deserving of everything this physical experience had to offer. I then made a vision board and put financial abundance and wealth affirmations on there. I repeated them every day and every chance I got, since I didn't do much and I was home a lot and it was easy for me to get in tuned and implant the affirmations pretty quickly. I then made a vision board from printed pictures of the internet, taped them on a flat piece of cardboard box and hammered it on my wall where I can see it and feel appreciation for all those things in the now, as if they were already mine. I began to meditate every day and go on a rampage of appreciation, as Abraham would say. I would meditate lotus style and raise my vibration. Then when I felt my vibration soar, I'd start thanking the universe for everything I had. This was a daily practice up until I won the jackpot. It got to the point where I felt gratitude in my walking life for every hair on my body. It was amazing how I actually felt gratitude for every little thing in my life. At this point, my self-confidence, my appreciation, and my self-love have soared to unbelievable heights. I remember feeling like I was on top of the world. I felt so good, even for the negative people that were in my life at that time. It just didn't seem to affect me anymore. I started making more money through the job I had at the time, and everything seemed to be going well. At this point, I still had the burning desire to win millions of dollars and never stopped playing the lottery twice a week. Even though I felt confident where I was, I kept saying, feeling, and believing the affirmations. I kept visualizing and feeling appreciation for the things I had with my vision board, and I continued to meditate and go on rampages of appreciation all up to the day I won the jackpot. I never stopped doing these things throughout this process. I held in my head and in my vibration so profoundly that vision, that feeling, that satisfaction, that desire and that belief that the jackpot was mine. One thing that Abraham said that finally hit me when I won was, you should live more in your dream than in your reality. That's exactly what I was doing. I felt so good because I was constantly living in my dream than in my current reality, still appreciating all I had and still yearning and burning for that jackpot win. This month that I had won the jackpot, I'd put myself and my vibration in a place of full expectation and belief that I was going to win. By that time, it was just a fact to me. I went, I remember, on a Monday to go buy 20 lines of Pick 6 lottery tickets, which cost me $20. As always, I put it in my back pocket, lit up a cigarette, and walked home. One thing that I want to point out is that I never even looked at the numbers. After a while, the numbers weren't important. I began to look at the ticket as if it was just a ticket. Odds, numbers, and probability were not in my awareness. I bought the tickets and rarely looked at the numbers. Anyway, that day, I got home and put the ticket inside my shoebox. The next day I wake up and decide to go online and check the previous night's drawing, and to my amazement, one of my 20 lines won the jackpot for $2 million. I remember feeling a feeling I cannot describe. I was thrilled. I remember just getting up and walking around and did not know what to do with myself. I had no relationship with my mother, whom I lived with, or with any of my other family members. A week later I took a cab to the lottery headquarters and validated my ticket. The lottery officials were sort of surprised to see this rugged 19-year-old validating a $2 million ticket alone. But I signed all the paperwork and I was done. I won $2 million, which left me with $1 million after taking the lump sum, which left me with $100,000 after federal taxes. I went back home and waited a month to move out before I somewhat reconciled some things with my mother. I own a beautiful condo here in Sarasota and own a successful business with a few partners here as well. Thanks to some wise investments, I currently have much more than what I won. I'm currently going to college part-time and will get my bachelor's in psychology next June. Currently, the Abraham materials that I have include Ask and It Is Given, Money and the Law of Attraction, The Astonishing Power of Emotions, The Complete Law of Attraction in Action series, Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham, and I have favorited every single video of Abraham on YouTube. Abraham Hicks changed my life forever. I don't know where I would be if I didn't pick up Ask and It Is Given. For that, I am very grateful and hold Abraham, Esther, and Jerry Hicks close to my heart. I've been noticing a lot of people in my personal life researching more than applying the material they have already learned. A lot of people spend too much time researching and reading the material instead of applying it into their own lives. Believe it or not, many people have learned all they can of the law of attraction, but still spend way too much time researching it instead of creating their dream life. I myself have been a victim of this research bug. I recommend many of you put down the books and start applying what you have learned and start creating the life of your dreams. This video is inspired by Atropine IV. who left a recent comment on one of my videos about huna, and that reminded me of a practice I experimented around with 5 to 10 years ago. Kind of an ancient Hawaiian healing practice of forgiveness called ho'oponopono. The literal translation is said to be to put to right, to put in order or shape, correct, revise, along the lines of what Neville Goddard teaches. And just as Neville taught, behind all of these different processes, techniques, is the power of the imagination. Neville had various success stories using various imaginary techniques between him and his students as well, so I would just look at this as another technique. This sometimes when people start to experience some frustration with Neville's techniques, and they don't know what to do with the negative feelings, or maybe they want to go about it a little bit different way, but still in the line of what Neville taught, I recommend giving a try to this ho'oponopono process. What really kind of put the ho'oponopono process on the map was a Hawaiian psychologist by the name of Dr. Haliakala Hulen. He was working in a state hospital in a ward where they had the most criminally insane patients. Families didn't visit, and the staff had a high turnover rate. Every month they were going through a new psychologist, and other supporting staff would call in sick and soon quit. Now Dr. Len didn't meet face to face with these patients, but he would look over their files. And what he felt was, whatever he's observing on the outside, he felt it came from something within. So he would work within himself, and this what can be put down to a 4-step process, to be able to forgive and let go. And what he found is that when he did this, the outside changed. Dr. Len says, in his own words, Dr. Len says, after a few months, patients that had to be shackled were being allowed to walk freely. Others who had to be heavily medicated were getting off their medications. And those who had no chance of ever being released were being freed. I was simply healing the part of me that created them, he said. Dr. Len basically took complete responsibility for his life, for everything he saw, heard, tasted, touched, or in any way experienced he felt was his responsibility because it's in his life. And in an interview with Dr. Joe Vitale, who was interviewing him, Vitale wrote, "This means that terrorist activity, the president, the economy, anything you experience and don't like, it is up for you to heal. They don't exist, in a manner of speaking, except as projections from inside you. The problem isn't with them, it's with you, and to change them, you have to change you." Dr. Vitale asked Dr. Len, what was he exactly doing to heal these patients when he was looking at their files? Dr. Len said, "I just kept saying, I'm sorry, and I love you over and over again." That's it? That's it. Which goes along with one of the imaginary techniques that Neville taught of a short phrase. It's done, or isn't it wonderful? At the core of Dr. Len's perspective is the idea of taking responsibility for more than your personal self, because you are in me and I am in you. His way of expressing ho'oponopono contains an awareness that the discordance we find in others and in the world outside ourselves is due to errors in thought stored in our personal and collective memories. The belief in these errors existing in some form of collective memory accessible to all allows for a person practicing ho'oponopono to clean these errors, whether the error originated in their personal thoughts or not. The secret is, there is no such thing as out there. Everything happens to you in your mind. Everything you see, everything you hear, every person you meet, you experience in your mind. You only think it's out there, and you think that absolves you of responsibility. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You are responsible for everything you think, and everything that comes to your attention. If you watch the news, everything you hear on the news is your responsibility. That may sound harsh, but it means that you are also able to clear it, clean it, and through forgiveness, change it. And now 4 simple steps on how to practice ho'oponopono, courtesy of Sebastian Gendry from LaughterOnlineUniversity.com. Various source links will be below the video. And now the 4 simple steps to this method, order not being important. And remember, the power in all of this is in the feeling and in the willingness to forgive and love. Step 1. Repentance. I'm sorry. As already mentioned, you are responsible for everything in your mind, even if it seems to be out there. Once you realize that, it's very natural to feel sorry. If I hear of a tornado, I am so full of remorse that something in my consciousness has created that idea. Or you can choose something you already know you've caused for yourself. Being overweight, addiction to nicotine, alcohol, or other substance, anger issues, health problems. Start there and say you're sorry. That's the whole step 1. I'm sorry. Step 2. Ask forgiveness. Please forgive me. Don't worry about who you're asking, just ask it. Say it over and over and mean it, remembering your remorse from step 1. Step 3. Gratitude. Thank you. Say thank you again. It doesn't really matter to who or what you're thanking. Thank your body for all it does for you. Thank yourself for being the best you can be. Thank God, the universe. Thank whatever it was that just forgave you. Just keep saying, thank you. Step 4. Love. I love you. Say, I love you. Say to your body, say to God. Say, I love you to the air you breathe, to the house that shelters you. Say it over and over and mean it. Feel it. Just like Neville says, there's nothing as powerful as love. That's it, the whole practice in a nutshell. Simple and amazingly effective. Now back to Dr. Vitali. Let me give you a quick example of how this works. One day, someone sent me an email that upset me. In the past, I would have handled it by working on my emotional hot buttons, or by trying to reason with the person who sent the nasty message. This time, I decided to try Dr. Len's method. I kept silently saying, I'm sorry, and I love you. I didn't say it to anyone in particular. I was simply evoking the spirit of love to heal within me what was creating the outer circumstance. Within an hour, I got an email from the same person. He apologized for his previous message. Keep in mind that I didn't take any outward action to get that apology. I didn't even write him back yet. Yet by saying I love you, I somehow healed within me what was creating him. Whenever you want to improve anything in your life, there's only one place to look, inside you. And when you look, do it with love. So if you are struggling with some of the imaginary techniques, give this a try and see how it goes. Now in some of the interviews I saw with Dr. Len, he would speak of God as an outside entity. But also don't forget, in some of Neville's exercises, he would sometimes talk of an exercise where you would say, thank you, Father. And that although you're talking to someone outside of you, deep down, you know you are the Father. It's just a little clip from Sia's I Go to Sleep, and she's imagining that he is there with her. A technique that Neville often talked about: when you go to sleep, imagine being already who you are, who you want to be, and or having whatever it is you want to have. Today I was Googling around and I came upon an interesting website, goodvibeblog.com. I slept with him every night, so I'd like to read from it for you. That's how she manifested the new love of a lifetime. She went to sleep with him every night, before she knew his name, before they'd even met. She went to sleep with him every night. She felt his arms wrapped lovingly around her as she drifted off to sleep, using a body pillow to help trick herself into the comforts of the cuddle. She actually had another guy in mind, a specific guy she thought would be a great candidate for love. He turned out to be a great stand-in to activate those feelings of love. But because she knew not to be attached to anyone in particular, she put her intention out for him or someone better. This was summertime that she started sleeping with her imaginary boyfriend and doing some cleanup in the love department, tying up loose ends and upgrading briefs, I gathered. By July, she nixed the idea of online dating. Didn't appeal to her, but she did receive an inspiration to go speed dating in August, just for fun. That's when she met a dozen different men, one of whom she felt an instant connection with. And she's been having fun with him ever since. Even better, than she ever dreamed a relationship could be, she reports. All from being willing to feel him emotionally, vibrationally, before he was real. From being willing to release thoughts of the guy she thought it should be, and from being willing to take inspired action just for fun. That's manifesting at its finest. So in sharing some of the comments, Noah says, "Wow, this is so close to my story, I just couldn't believe someone else used the exact same method. So glad to know it worked for someone else too." Sophie says, "That's funny. When I miss my boyfriend, I do the same. I feel his body next to mine and it allows me to fall asleep with a smile. And usually the next day, we see each other, LOL." And Cindy says, "Can I fall asleep with money?" And Elle replied, "You most certainly can." And Beck says, "I did this, amongst other processes. I imagined walking down the beach with him, having candlelit dinners at home, listening to music with him, sleeping next to him. After being single most of my married life, 2 years ago I met and married my husband at 48 years of age. We walk down the beach almost every day, and candlelit dinners are our norm. It works." And Elle says, "Yep, playing pretend actually works. I've manifested many things this way. After cleaning up bad, detrimental negative feelings, of course. Playing dress rehearsal. It's really fun. Also, there are things I was happy about in the past that the universe ended up bringing to me. For example, when passing by a certain place, I was like, wow, what a really cool place. And one summer, I ended up doing an internship there. Just feeling good with no strings attached is the key." Mrs. V says, "I was freaking out in Paranoia City, thinking that my Mac had been hacked with my story, LOL. I'd done this and got the extra toothbrush, cups, and plates, made room for him in my bed, got the shaving mousse, aftershave, etc. I did also write a list and wanted someone specific, but I didn't get him as I went off him. Then I got talking to another man who fitted the bill, but it was not him. Then after less than 2 weeks of me getting rid of my tomboy mode, I indeed found love. He fitted the bill and was more handsome than the first man. The thing is, we live apart, which is good for both of us, but he hates sleeping without me. I feel that too, although I love my space. We didn't have a good start to our relationship, but we really do love each other. What I suggest is to write a list of what you want as well, because you will get it. So be warned not to write things down when you are feeling a bit angry, insecure, etc., because you will get a whiff of that too in your manifestation. I am revising that part and Goddard style so we can move on from the blip. Also, keep in mind that the minute you start taking action to meet your love, he or she will come into your world like magic. You just have to be sure you are ready and be ready for your good talking action. I am glad to know that so many of you have had the same experience with this. I am now doing this in other areas of my life too. Jeanette says, "Maybe a group experiment is in order, Ada. That could be a fun post to focus on and invite everyone to play with." Julie says, "I made a list of character and personality traits that my ideal man would have. I spent a little bit of time on it, emailed it to myself and forgot about it. He turned up to a T. I mean everything, the whole package. 8 months later, still going strong. Decide what you want and be honest. Set the intention and have patience." So I came across that website article as well as a song while I was looking for something else. And it just really resonated because it's something I'm doing right now that I had learned from Neville. And it's nice to see other people having success with that. And I too have even wondered, is it this one or someone better? And sometimes I played around with different people or different amounts of wealth that we had or different places we lived. And so that's how it's been recently, looking for something else, and I come across this website as well as this song, and it really resonates with me because it's something I'm doing right now, a technique I learned from Neville. And to hear all these people's success stories in modern day is very inspiring. The past week I've been going to bed with my love. Past week or so. I mean, sometimes I might explore what if it's this or that person instead. And sometimes I explore having different amounts of wealth or being in different parts of the world. I know Neville has had success being specific. With his second wife, he was specific in imagining sleeping each night with her in their apartment in New York City. And it worked for him. But I also know sometimes people will put in that extra saying, which I had learned a long time ago, this one or someone better. Sometimes you do get that specific person, and sometimes someone else comes along, and oftentimes someone who fits what you're looking for even more perfectly. At this point in my life, though, I want to find the one forever. I feel so much I've found that. But I don't know, I can't say it's 100%. And I don't know if that's just because sometimes past seeds that manifest now, time to time when it doesn't go smooth, I'm very sensitive. Honestly, when I put out a list of what I wanted in someone, this is not the one that represents those things, because we don't have a lot of things in common. But it doesn't matter, because I still redeemed them. That in time, those things we would be able to share together, what we both love. Or at least be able to respectively do those things in balance. I do leave it open. This one or something better for me. But my focus is this one. So I do feel using imaginary techniques right when you're going to sleep, bringing it into sleep, is such a powerful time to do this. Whether you want to be in a certain place and or be with a certain person, or going to sleep knowing you're whoever or having whatever. If you want to go after something specific, then do so. And don't be afraid to experiment around. Happy imagining.
The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, Book Excerpts. Dr. Joseph Murphy. Within your subconscious depths lie infinite wisdom, infinite power, and infinite supply of all that is necessary, which is waiting for development and expression. Begin now to recognize these potentialities of your deeper mind, and they will take form in the world without. The infinite intelligence within your subconscious mind can reveal to you everything you need to know at every moment of time and point of space, provided you are open-minded and receptive. You can receive new thoughts and ideas, enabling you to bring forth new inventions, make new discoveries, or write books and plays. Moreover, the infinite intelligence in your subconscious can impart to you wonderful kinds of knowledge of an original nature. It can reveal to you and open the way for perfect expression and true place in your life. Through the wisdom of your subconscious mind, you can attract the ideal companion, as well as the right business associate or partner. It can find the right buyer for your home and provide you with all the money you need and the financial freedom to be, to do, and to go as your heart desires. It is your right to discover this inner world of thought, feeling, and power, of light, love, and beauty. Though invisible, its forces are mighty. Within your subconscious mind, you will find the solution for every problem and the cause for every effect. Because you can draw out the hidden powers, you come into actual possession of the power and wisdom necessary to move forward in abundance, security, joy, and dominion. I have seen the power of the subconscious lift people up out of crippled states, making them whole, vital, and strong once more, and free to go out into the world to experience happiness, health, and joyous expression. There is a miraculous healing power in your subconscious that can heal the troubled mind and the broken heart. It can open the prison door to the mind and liberate you. It can free you from all kinds of material and physical bondage. If you wish to sell a home or property of any kind, affirm slowly, quietly, and feelingly as follows. Infinite intelligence attracts to me the buyer for this house or property, who wants it and who prospers in it. Sustain this awareness, and the deeper currents of your subconscious mind will bring it to pass. Your subconscious has the answer to all problems. If you suggest to your subconscious prior to sleep, I want to get up at 6 a.m.,
it will awaken you at that exact time. The first step in conveying your clarified desire, ideal, or image to the deeper mind is to relax, immobilize the attention, get still and be quiet. This quiet, relaxed, and peaceful attitude of mind prevents extraneous matter and false ideas from interfering with your mental absorption of your idea. Furthermore, in the quiet, passive, and receptive attitude of mind, effort is reduced to a minimum. The second step is to begin to imagine the reality of that which you desire. For example, you may wish to buy a home, and in your relaxed state of mind affirm as follows: "The infinite intelligence of my subconscious mind is all-wise. It reveals to me now the ideal home, which is central, ideal, is in a lovely environment, meets with all my requirements, and is commensurate meets with all my requirements, and is commensurate with my income. I am now turning this request over to my subconscious mind, and I know it responds according to the nature of my request. I release this request with absolute faith and confidence in the same way that a farmer deposits a seed in the ground, trusting implicitly in the laws of growth. The answer to your prayer may come through an advertisement in the paper, through a friend, or you may be guided directly to a particular home which is exactly what you are seeking. There are many ways by which your prayer may be answered. The principal knowledge in which you may place your confidence is that the answer always comes, provided you trust the working of your deeper mind. A young man who attends my lectures had this experience. His father died and apparently left no will. However, this man's sister told him that their father had confided to her that a will had been executed, which was fair to all. Every attempt to locate the will failed. Prior to sleep, he talked to his deeper mind as follows: "I now turn this request over to the subconscious mind. It knows just where that will is and reveals it to me." Then he condensed his request down to one word: answer. Repeating it over and over again as a lullaby, he lulled himself to sleep with the word answer. The next morning, this young man had an overpowering hunch to go to a certain bank in Los Angeles, where he found a safe deposit vault registered in the name of his father, the contents of which solved all his problems. Your thought, as you go to sleep, arouses the powerful latency which is within you. For example, let us suppose you are wondering whether to sell your home, buy a certain stock, sever partnership, move to New York, or stay in Los Angeles, dissolve the present contract or take a new one. Do this. Sit quietly in your armchair or at the desk in your office. Remember that there is a universal law of action and reaction. The action is your thought. The reaction is the response from your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is reactive and reflexive. This is its nature. It rebounds, rewards, and repays. It is the law of correspondence. It responds by corresponding. As you contemplate right action, you will automatically experience a reaction or response in yourself which represents the guidance or answer of your subconscious mind. In seeking guidance, you simply think quietly about right action, which means that you are using the infinite intelligence resident in the subconscious mind to the point where it begins to use you. From there on, your course of action is directed and controlled by the subconscious wisdom within you, which is all-wise and omnipotent. Your decision will be right. There will only be right action because you are under a subjective compulsion to do the right thing. I use the word compulsion because the law of the subconscious is compulsion. I will illustrate how the wisdom of your subconscious mind can instruct you and protect you relative to your request for right action as you go to sleep. Many years ago, before the Second World War, I was offered a very lucrative assignment in the Orient, and I prayed for guidance and the right decision as follows: Infinite intelligence within me knows all things, and the right decision is revealed to me in divine order. I will recognize the answer when it comes. I repeated this simple prayer over and over again as a lullaby prior to sleep, and in a dream came the vivid realization of things to come 3 years hence. An old friend appeared in the dream and said, "Read these headlines. Do not go." The headlines of the newspaper which appeared in the dream related to war and the attack on Pearl Harbor. Occasionally, the writer dreams literally. The aforementioned dream was undoubtedly a dramatization of the subconscious mind which projected a person whom I trusted and respected. To some, a warning may come in the form of a mother who appears in a dream. She tells the person not to go here or there and the reason for the warning. Your subconscious mind is all-wise. It knows all things. Oftentimes it will speak to you only in a voice that your conscious mind will immediately accept as true. Sometimes your subconscious will warn you in a voice which sounds like that of your mother or some loved one, which may cause you to stop on the street, and you find if you had gone another foot, a falling object from a window might have struck you on the head. My subconscious mind is one with the universal subconscious, and it knew the Japanese were planning a war, and it also knew when the war would start. Dr. Rhine, director of the Department of Psychology at Duke University, has gathered together a vast amount of evidence showing that a great number of people all over the world see events before they happen, and in many instances are, therefore, able to avoid the tragic event which was foreseen vividly in a dream. The dream, which I had showed clearly the headlines in the New York Times about 3 years prior to the tragedy of Pearl Harbor. In consequence of this dream, I immediately canceled the trip as I felt a subconscious compulsion to do so. 3 years later, the Second World War proved the truth of the inner voice of intuition. You spend about 8 out of every 24 hours, or 1/3 of your entire life, in sleep. This is an inexorable law of life. This also applies to the animal and vegetable kingdoms. Sleep is a divine law, and many answers to our problem come to us when we are sound asleep upon the bed. Many people have advocated the theory that you get tired during the day, that you go to sleep to rest the body, and that a reparative process takes place while you sleep. Nothing rests in sleep. Your heart, lungs, and all your vital organs function while you are asleep. If you eat prior to sleep, the food is digested and assimilated. Also, your skin secretes perspiration, and your nails and hair continue to grow. Your subconscious mind never rests or sleeps. It is always active, controlling all your vital forces. The healing process takes place more rapidly while you are asleep, as there is no interference from your conscious mind. Remarkable answers are given to you while you are asleep. Turn over your request for a solution to your subconscious prior to sleep. Trust it and believe in it, and the answer will come. It knows all and sees all, but you must not doubt or question its powers. Guidance is given you while you are asleep, sometimes in a dream. The healing currents are also released, and in the morning you feel refreshed and rejuvenated. You are a son of infinite life, which knows no end. You are a child of eternity.
Hey, lucky me, I'm gonna win the lottery.
Today I came across an interesting website. Time to time I look on the web to see people in modern day who've had success using Neville's techniques. The website is loamoimoi.blogspot.com. The web page is entitled Neville Goddard Techniques Lottery Winning. Some excerpts from the web page. A few of you here may know that for a good year and a half, or maybe more now, I've been concentrating on the goal of manifesting a large sum of money. Not very original, I know, but this chosen objective was for various reasons. It was partly an experimental one to see if these works actually worked, and partly to alleviate myself from the financial predicament of my ever-growing bank student debts, which I could no longer ignore. And okay, I'll admit it, I just wanted to be filthy rich too, not very spiritual, I know. Now, Moi actually carried around a mechanical tally counter, something that sports people use, and he carried this around and would just click this throughout the day whenever he thought of the state of wealth, and he did this for 4 months, trying to increase the number of wealth hits per day. and results fluctuated drastically. Some days there was 300 clicks, a following day 15 clicks. And moi believed that overall, this simple mental exercise locked moi into a positive aggregate feeling of wealth, as well as limiting the mental space for negative thoughts and feelings to seep into. So moi also dabbled around using hypnosis, and one of moi's favorite was Wendy Frieson's Abundant CDs. So moi was drawn to the UK's National Lottery. Moi imagined winning the jackpot, and in moi's words, I honed in on the state by doing various rituals that would crank up the emotions needed, because as I've stated previously on this forum, sitting still and calmly meditating in the state akin to sleep was for me always prohibitive in reaching the prescribed emotional requirements. At one stage I even physically ran around my living room, clutching an out-of-date ticket, pretending family members were around me also celebrating, just to fire myself up. Here are a few other things I did. I, tired to block out the randomness of the lottery and what I felt at the time were the absurd odds of actually winning and choosing this as a goal, I just concentrated on the feeling of being in possession of a winning ticket. I also purchased the book Living on the Lottery by the Beatles' official biographer Hunter Davis, which followed the ups and downs, etc. of 20 or so lottery winners. This book was unintentionally a good insight into the divine workings of the human imagination. For instance, most of the winners claimed they instinctively knew that they would win. There is even one testimony by a twice-divorced, down-on-his-luck chap who claimed he used to go to bed every night, imagining what he'd do if he actually won the lottery. I took a small break to the US, which at the time I couldn't really afford, but I did it to expand my feeling parameters and to also cultivate a sense of limits and distance collapsing, something I felt would be an integral part of the state of being wealthy. I purchased and watched the film Brewster's Millions, God knows how many times. Instead of taking cigarette breaks at work, by this time I had given them up anyway, I'd lock myself into a toilet cubicle just to take a few minutes to visualize myself winning. Again, I wasn't always successful, but these small imaginings all contributed in building the positive inertia that moved me towards the state of inner certainty, an integral part of gaining instant financial wealth. Well, I could go on with other bizarre rituals I performed, but I'm sure you get the general idea now. So on Friday 27th of October 2006, I went to my local newsagents to purchase €30, 56 USD at the time, worth of Euro lottery tickets, all lucky dips. And on the same evening, one of those tickets matched 5 numbers, and one of the 2 required bonus balls, winning me £108,000, roughly 190,000 USD at the time. I hadn't realized I won until I checked my numbers 2 weeks later, by the way. Imagine the best you know, Jeff Harrison, England. I think what moi wrote was very interesting, to see all the different ways used to help keep that mind in the state of the wish fulfilled. And Davis's book, Living on the Lottery, is pretty fascinating when he found that many of the lottery numbers, they just knew they were going to win. They believed it. And what they believed, that's what became. And what they believed is what they experienced in their reality. And in him continuing to do this and experiment around, and what he said that these small imaginings all contributed in building the positive inertia that moved me towards that state of inner certainty, an integral part of gaining instant financial wealth. So moi is one of the first examples I've come across of someone who used Neville Goddard's techniques to win a significant amount of money, just under $250,000 net USD. And it seems the key for moi was to find different ways to frequently, intensely feel that wish fulfilled, or to just get excited about what it was that moi wanted. So having that counter would help moi become more aware of where moi's thoughts were. Was it unwell? And like Neville, getting into that relaxed, sleepy state, whether it be hypnosis or meditation, and then imagining from there. So moi didn't just
imagine on a mental level, but moi would also act it out, as Neville sometimes would talk about when he'd be walking down the streets of New York. He'd pretend he's walking down the streets of Barbados and feeling the salty breeze on him. And moi, along with his imagining, also did things that kept moi excited, whether it was reading books on major lottery winners or watching movies of someone having won the lottery, or maybe taking quasi-lavish trips. So we have to find what we want. What is it that we hunger for like that? What tool are you going to use to be more aware of your thoughts throughout the day? And for you to set times throughout the day where you will feel this wish fulfilled, whether it be mentally, and or physically as well. And also, what things can you surround yourself in your life to keep you excited about this thing you want until it appears in this reality? So that you continue to do all these things until you reach that feeling that you know you're going to get what you want. And you just go about your life and it's already there. I wish everyone happy imagining.
Outpicturing from expansions.com. Imagine a world where everything that you think automatically appears in front of you. If you think about living in a larger home, you are instantly within it. If you think of eating a wonderful food, it is automatically before you. If you think of visiting a beautiful location, you are suddenly there. If you imagine the perfect relationship, it automatically exists. Your life and world would certainly be different. While this might sound entertaining and wonderful, you would have to live by different rules and regulations. For example, you would need to exercise more control over your thoughts, so that your environment was not constantly changing moment by moment, depending upon your moods and focus. In the same way, thoughts of different locations would leave you bouncing around the planet, perhaps even beyond. You might not be able to finish one meal before another one would appear, and so on. And of course, what about the negative thoughts that cross your mind? Have you ever been so angry that you wished something terrible upon someone? In your instantaneous world, this would occur. Or have you ever been so depressed that you would just like to curl up and die? This could happen as well. Back and forth, the world would not be a very constant place, because of the lack of control that most people have over their own thought processes. It is a good thing that most thoughts do not outpicture quite so quickly. However, each person is already outpicturing his or her deepest thoughts on a gradient level. That means the most conscious, constant, and most focused thoughts are the ones that you see outpictured back to you on an everyday basis. Most people do not realize it, as the world outpictured around you has depth and breadth, the same as your thoughts. Hidden thoughts, or less consciously acknowledged ones, outpicture differently than those on the forefront of your mind. For this reason, even though you may not recognize it, what you need most physically outpictures the closest to you. The stores, food, relationships, everything that you need on a daily interactive basis is already around you as an outpicture of your thought process. These things automatically are drawn to you. The people who are around you, whether you know or like them, are the ones who most closely outpicture your mind patterns regarding relationships, finances, self-worth issues, etc. Everything that exists in your world is an outpicture of your thoughts. The deeper within that you go, the further away from home you must physically travel to experience that particular outpicturing. However, when you merge the hidden depth with the conscious everyday awareness, even that which is hidden inside is now able to outpicture physically close to you. Television and movies, as well as computer and video games, are the largest sources of outpicturing at this time. If you live your life vicariously through these modalities, the most conscious levels of your existence feel satisfied. So rather than explore space for yourself, watching someone else do it in a fictitious story satisfies you enough that you forget that you could do this yourself. Most people are satisfied to leave certain experience to science fiction novels, believing that the stories are impossible. Through these stories, they think they have experienced as much of the impossible as can be experienced upon this planet. They may speak about these things with others, but the thoughts of actual experience is beyond the comprehension of most people. This is why some people are known as all talk. If you have an energy seed and you mentally nourish and feed it, it has a chance to grow. But if all you do is talk about it, the energy seed or original thought is consumed and the momentum to actually outpicture the thought is lost. In other words, if you experience it mentally in its totality, there is no need for you to bring that thought into fruition in this reality. Talking about it is simply enough to satisfy your desire. The energy seed is gone with the wind, and so is your desire to experience it further. Mentally experiencing something and physically experiencing something is really one and the same. So the powers that be lead you into outpicturing your fantasies so that you do not actualize them. This is one way of stealing your potential from you. Because you use their outpicturing, you do not take the time to outpicture for yourself. For example, most people expect to age. One of the first things that you are imprinted with as a child is the average lifespan of a male and female human. This is reinforced through Social Security, pensions, and retirement plans the minute you enter the workforce. People become a senior citizen somewhere between the age of 55 and 65, with monetary incentives for declaring yourself one, thereby reinforcing the mind imprint. Forced retirement pushes many people into depression as they accept the end of their usefulness. The reality is that the human body is designed to regenerate itself and last for hundreds of years. But rather than create a body that does this, again, the average human looks to external sources that change the outer looks, but not the mind pattern that created a failing body in the first place. So even with plastic surgery and popular supplements like HGH, the body still fails regardless of how it looks. As another example, think of a chiropractor. Because chiropractors exist, it is easy to make an appointment to adjust your back when it is out of place. This easily available resource takes away your impetus to learn how to hold your back into place by creating the correct mind pattern. When you have a pattern, you just go to someone outside of yourself who can fix it. Using a chiropractor as a window of opportunity is great, but becoming dependent on one takes away your chance to develop your own innate healing, self-correcting, and self-balancing skills. Necessity is often the mother of invention. But if you are fed a constant stream of new experiences, you forget to think about what you would like to experience. You have no need to invent or create outside of the box. Your every mental need is met before you even realize that a need exists. This is because your needs are artificially created and then met. You follow the yellow brick road wherever it takes you, thinking that all your desires are satisfied. Most people become so accustomed to using the outpictures of others that either they forget they can do it, or they simply never reach the realization of their full potential. Continue to use these quickly changing times as the impetus that drives you further into actualizing your full potential. Push your way into your inner depths so that you are in control of what you outpicture rather than allowing others to be one step ahead of you. When you see what they offer, do not change yourself to match their misleading outpicturings. Instead, operate from the internal to correctly outpicture the external to outpicture you, rather than vice versa. Think about it. What I learned when I won the $112 million lottery. Cynthia P. Stafford, as told to Koa Beck. From Marie Claire. When I found out I had won $112 million in the California Mega Millions jackpot 8 years ago, I wasn't even watching the TV. The winning numbers had been announced a few days before, but my kids and I had forgotten to check. Then my father called and told me to look at my ticket. The random numbers aligned. I felt elated, like I was floating. When you win the lottery, you can either opt to go to the state lottery office or receive the check in the mail. You can also accept one lump sum or installments. My brother, father, and I decided to go collect the check in one lump sum in person. It was more exciting that way. On the way to the state lottery office, I remember thinking that this money was coming at precisely the right time and that I had willed it into my possession. I generally played the lottery about 2 or 3 times a month, and friends and families always said, "Oh, you know, a lot of people try and win." And I would always say, "Yeah, but I'm going to win." I've been focusing on winning for so long, that when I did finally win, it didn't even feel random. It felt like I had made it happen. My trick? Whenever I bought my ticket, I would visualize winning. At first, I picked my own numbers, but then, as I would visualize the money as my own, I'd pick whatever quick, random numbers flashed in my head. I even chose that exact number, $112 million. I decided that I would win that amount. The first thing I did with my winnings was go house hunting. I'd been living in Southern California in an 1,100 square foot house raising my late brother's 5 kids. At the time, they ranged in age from 8 to 17 years old. I was working as an account executive with a computer technology firm. I sold specialized software training for computer techs in major corporate organizations. I was financially supporting the kids, myself, as well as helping my dad out here and there where I could. Money was tight, but we were okay. I've always known how to work with what I've had. When I asked the kids what they would like in our new house, they unanimously said, a pool. So I looked for a house with a pool. I found a 4,000 square foot home in the Pacific Palisades. That was the house I had always imagined myself in. It wasn't crazy decked out, no huge big backyard, but it felt very open. Nearly 10 years after winning, I'm still living in it and I still love it. Next, I upgraded my car. I bought a used Mercedes-Benz R-Class. Then I set up a film production company, something else I always envisioned myself doing. A couple of the kids were getting into acting. I had paid for them to take acting courses prior to winning, and one of my daughters was getting a lot of work. I started going with her to different sets where she was filming and getting a good sense of the business. I had taken a 2-day business course at the Hollywood Film Institute with the founder, Dov Simmons, about a year before I'd won. I remember being in the class, and he asked everyone a question. How many of us had the money to make a film? Some of the class raised their hands. And then how many of us intended to have the money to make a film? I raised my hand for that one. Later on, I bought a lot of little things, a trainer, a trip to Paris. I've donated to charities I've always admired. But I look back now on the first time I took that business course and realized that I was getting myself prepared for the new life I felt sure I'd have. That's the thing about money. You have to prepare yourself for wealth. You have to mentally prepare for what is going to occur at least as much as you can. That's why I think I'm an anomaly as a successful stable lottery winner. I prepared and recruited people like financial advisors and lawyers who I began researching before even winning to help me get to the correct mindset of possessing this much money. My financial situation has shifted since winning the lottery. I've had many losses, businesses that have gone south, and people have stolen from me. But I've learned to trust myself more than anything. My intuition has become my most valuable asset. And yes, I still play the lottery once a week. After all, it's only a couple of dollars. Cyntha P. Stafford won the California lottery in 2007. She is the CEO of Queen Nefertari Productions and serves on the board of directors of the Geffen Theater in Los Angeles. I came across yet another interesting website, and I think this particular site, its message, will be like a missing puzzle piece to many, including myself. The name of the website is calmdownmind.com. You can find the link below the video. The title of the webpage, When Your Desire Feels Ordinary, it's on the verge of manifestation. Written by Sane. One of the misguided understandings people have, especially those who are learning about the law of attraction, is that exhilaration is the highest vibration to achieve, and that the more exhilarated they stay, the quicker the manifestation. In truth, exhilaration is simply a state of transition. When you are moving from a low vibration to a stable vibration, it's a transitory state. You feel exhilarated when you have been on a low and are moving towards a state of relief. This transition is experienced in the body as that blissed out feeling. So in truth, there is no such thing as a high state. There is only a state of relief, which is akin to wholeness, and what you define as a high state is a temporary, transitory feeling as you move from a low vibration to the vibration of relief. The stable state is always ordinary and feels more like wholeness than exhilaration. Also, a lot of people have this delusion that once they reach their desired reality, they will be exhilarated all the time. which is not only an unreasonable thought to have, but it also disconnects you from the reality of physical life, where excited states or high states are not permanent. The more time the body spends in a high state, that more time it requires on the low state to compensate for it. That's why overexcitement is always followed by some depression. The steady state for the body is one of wholeness, which actually is a state of simplicity or ordinariness. It's not a dull state. It's just a state free of extremes, overexcitement or depression. When you reach a point where your desires don't overexcite you, but just feel whole or ordinary, you are far less resistant to their manifestation. That's definitely something I've been guilty of. When I do my imaginal thinking, especially on things that don't happen right away, I'm looking for a scene that gives such excitement. And I definitely have felt the lows sometimes right after the imaginal session, or sometimes I feel so high off the imaginal session, I might not feel the low until like days later. And when I would feel the low, I would wonder, well, am I supposed to just keep repeating these imaginal sessions, keep feeling these highs? And I was kind of missing the target, because it seems like these extreme emotions, whether they're of doubt or fear or frustration, or on the same coin but opposite side, these high states of being overexcited. When in all reality, when we think about in our past, when something did come to pass that we intended for or wanted, it's like Neville said as well, it just comes in a very ordinary way. And I think that's a key component when we're doing our imaginary sessions, to pick a scene that would imply the wish fulfilled, but not necessarily one where it's full of overexcitement, but just a feeling that it's just so natural and ordinary that it's already in our life right now. And Sen goes on to write about this. A lot of people focus on pumping up their excitement levels, which they equate with a high vibration, and try to visualize their desires in this state of excitement. However, a desired reality, when it manifests, would always feel ordinary. You can see it in all your past life experiences that every time a desired reality manifested, it felt so ordinary. It felt like the next thing, and usually it manifested when you are no longer making a big deal about it. The truth is that reality is always ordinary, and it's usually when we have some deluded or hyped up imagination about the future that we feel overexcited. And as long as you are not looking at your desire from the context of the ordinariness of reality, you will always have some delusion of big dealness about it, and thus you would indirectly be in resistance to its manifestation. And Sen goes on to talk about how we move from this more immature mind to a more mature mind that understands this. And he says, if something feels extraordinary to you, it just means you are not in touch with reality. With respect to a desire, you've not really aligned yourself with the circumstances which you will end up in when your desire manifests. A desire becomes a fantasy when you are holding extraordinary imaginations about it and projecting a lot of big dealness to it. Reality, on the other hand, is far removed from the fantasies of the mind. It's far too ordinary than what the mind imagines it to be. The hallmark of a mature mind is that it does not associate fantastic imaginations with respect to a desire and is willing to see the desired reality in the context of ordinariness. There is a place for feeling excited and exhilarated about a desire, especially during the initial few days when it's hatched, and it's an enjoyable experience. But if you don't allow yourself to see through all your excitements, delusions, and thus be rooted in the ordinariness of reality, you would just end up holding onto a fantasy, which removes you from being aligned with the true vibration of your desired physical reality, which directly means that you are not a match to attracting it. Sen goes on to say that it's natural in the beginning. As with any new thing, it's always exciting. But at some point when that excitement starts to die down, and especially when what you want to be or have hasn't come in fast enough into this reality, he says soon enough you will start seeing it from the dimension of fear, when you have doubts about it, and then you will start seeing it from the dimension of hatred, hating the desire for not manifesting, which are both low vibration states of being and hence highly resistant to manifestation. However, the problem is that you keep trying to get back to feeling exhilarated about the desire, instead of allowing yourself to naturally move into a place of nonchalance about the desire, where you see it as ordinary, from the dimension of boredom in the mind. And this I can relate to in the sense that when I had certain, what I thought were big desires, even though in my imagination I would try to imagine it's not big, that it's already happened, but often there'd be this big excitement around it. So I was kind of missing the boat of, if it really did happen as things have happened in the past, it comes more from a state, like he's saying, and Neville has said, that's more natural, that you feel maybe it would have come about anyways. And yes, as time passes on, especially when there's something you want that's big, especially like money, where there's pressures and stuff, and love is another big one with people, when these things don't happen right away or they seem to be going the opposite way, definitely the feeling of fear comes in with many. And what I found is that when that excitement did start to die away, I would start to think, maybe I don't really want this, and I would look for something else that would excite me, and then continue on this cycle. But doing what I've done on YouTube, and some of the comments that have left me that have kind of pointed me in the direction to think about these things, and just asking myself, what more is there to know? Or how can it be said in a way that would click more with me? Why do we do this? Get overexcited and keep chasing that excitement? Sen writes, this is because you feel afraid of allowing the desire to feel ordinary, because you think that if the desire feels ordinary, it will lose its importance in your mind. But if you allow yourself to just stay natural, you will see that the desire naturally starts feeling ordinary after a while, and this is what allows a resistance-free manifestation of it. The state of exhilaration is only a primary, preliminary state, and it's not meant to be maintained to manifest the desire. And this kind of answers a question that I've been asked, that even I have asked myself and went searching online for, but I feel like I've looked so much, I didn't think I would come across anything new like I did in this website. But I just felt there was something out there, something for me to know. Sometimes we've wondered, why is it sometimes it feels this as work? Especially on things where we might have only thought maybe one moment for a few seconds. Then in a time that didn't seem so long, we saw the reality and could trace the harvest back to our thought, even if it wasn't even intentional. I think it's because what we envisioned was just so natural, and there wasn't any resistance to it, and it outpictured. And it's not to say that sometimes I would do an imaginary session on something, afterwards I'd be like, this isn't going to work, or I'd have some fear, and sometimes it still would work. But also in the back of my mind, one, there's more of a believability that it could happen, even though I didn't think it would, and two, they weren't things where I was seeing the opposite of, in reality, facing me like every day. Either it was something kind of small, kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it was for someone else. Even if it seemed miraculous, I wasn't attached to it. Whether days, weeks, or months passed, I didn't even think about it. The things we care so much about, like love and our money, those things we think about every day. Those things are more predominant in our thought. Those things are more in our face. So Sen closes the webpage with these words. The natural phases transition that a mind goes through with respect to a desire are exhilaration, joy and love, doubt, fear, frustration, hatred, nonchalance, boredom. When it reaches the final stage of nonchalance, it's least resistant to manifesting the desire, and hence the manifestation starts unfolding with ease. A lot of people either get stuck in doubt or keep trying to recreate the exhilaration, which basically creates more frustration. Instead of allowing a natural transition into nonchalance, where you are no longer thinking a big deal out of the desire. This is when you really get in tune with the ordinariness of life, and thus see your desire from the context of reality. This is the stable place from where you allow a smooth manifestation to unfold. So be sure to check out Sen's site for other interesting articles on calmdownmind.com.